Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to another episode of Knife Thursday. And I have a question for you. Have you ever been out splitting and stacking wood and wondered, I wonder what bushcraft knife I should buy? Maybe should it be under 50 or around 100 or over 150, or what makes them good and what makes them bad? So that's what I thought when I was stacking wood this morning, and I want to make a video about it. So I've got some knives here, and I'm just going to go through and do some testing and show you guys the differences between some knives that are in way different price ranges. At the bottom, I've got this Condor Swamp Romper, which I just got, and I will be doing a full review on this. Along with that, on the lower end, I've got a Mora Bushcraft Orange. This is the stainless one, and this will be kind of in comparison to this stainless knife, which is it's the most expensive bushcraft type camp knife that I own, which is a Falkneven S1, and this is a stainless blade, VG10 core with 420 laminations on the outside. And then the last blade that I've got for comparison is an Ahti Vara Puukko, and that is made in Finland, and it is very cool, and this one retails for about 95. The Bushcraft Orange you can get for like around 30 bucks. Swamp Romper is like low 40s. This is, I think, retails for like 175 or something like that. So, you know, you definitely have a wide variety in blades. So what I'm going to do is do some cut tests and see if you actually need to spend more money. Now, these two are stainless and these two are high carbon. Just to give you an idea, I figured it would be kind of weird to compare a stainless to high carbon and all that stuff. This is 1075, which is Condor steel that they always use. This is 1095, I believe. Like I said, this is VG10, and this is the Sandvik stainless that Mora uses. So let's do some testing, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a first person and an outside view of what this looks like. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the sheaths for these knives. So you kind of have a wide variance here between the budget stuff and the more expensive stuff. You know, let's start with this Ahti Puukko. What a beautiful sheath. I mean, this thing is just, it's gorgeous. These are made by one or two guys over in Finland. They're very, very cool, and it's, you know, traditional. It's leather. It does have a little plastic insert down in there, and the retention is just friction, and it is quite good, and you get a nice dangler with it. I like the sheath quite a bit on this. It's good retention, but it doesn't like, it's not so hard to get out that it's like a pain in the butt. Then let's look at the other expensive knife, the Falkneven S1. Now, I really love this blade, and this was a gift from a viewer, actually in Finland. So Peter, thanks again. Boy, I'm like dangerous right here. But this sheath it's essentially plastic. I mean, they can call it whatever they want, Zytel or whatever. The retention is through this little tab, so if this little tab breaks off, then you're kind of cooked. The little guard pushes past that, you can see. That's it. That's all it does. So the retention on this is no good unless you clip it. I personally like this sheath quite a bit less than I like the super cheap Moras. Now, I have Moras that are, you know, I've got the $14 companion in my car. It's always in my car. This thing costs a little bit more. You get a couple little options. This swings and everything. But for much less money, you get a sheath that doesn't rattle quite as much as this really expensive one. So sheath wise, there's a big difference. I think the best sheath of them all is the Condor, and these guys are kind of noted for how nice their sheaths are, but man, just a beautiful, thick, full grain leather, nice thick welt in there. You know, comes with the eyelet here for throwing a, you know, so you can strap it to your leg if you want. Comes with a ferro rod holder, really nice stitching with, you know, nice thick thread, and a beautiful dangler that's really tall. And you could, if you wanted to, probably just bend this D-ring out of there if you just wanted to use this as a hip knife, but I much prefer the dangler. So for me, this thing wins in sheath by a long shot. Now there is a, let me just say this, there is a leather sheath available for the Falknevens for a little extra cost that I've heard is much, much better. But I can't see it being a whole lot better than this Condor sheath, which is excellent. And you're paying a lot more. So for sheaths, I don't think that necessarily getting a premium or expensive bushcraft blade, it's not like your sheath is going to be that much better, in my experience. A lot of guys go ahead and get custom Kydex stuff, but that kind of defeats the purpose for me. I want a good sheath out of the factory. Actually, there's a lot of high-end knives that don't even come with a sheath for the base price. You have to pay like an extra $50 or $80 or sometimes $100 for this sheath that they send you. So anyway, as far as sheaths go, the best one is the Condor, so budget wins. And I would say number 2 is this Ati, which is, this is probably second in my book, and this is, like I said, a little less than $100. You know, Mora is third for the sheath, and the Falkneven, the most expensive, is dead last in the sheath department. Now, let's go on to the blades themselves. Actually, let's do the handles and the grips, because one of the most important things about a knife is how it feels in your hand. And because if you're going to be carving with this thing, you want it to be comfortable. So let's just start at the least expensive and work our way up. So least expensive is the Mora. Now this is the rubberized grip. This is great for practical use, especially in the woods. Like, this is a great hunting knife. You know, when I'm field dressing a deer or skinning a deer, this is really grippy and it never loses grip. Very, very, very comfortable. I think you guys know, if you've watched the channel, that I'm a huge fan of Mora. I've loved them. I think they're the absolute best value, and everyone should have at least a couple. So this, if I was going to give it, you know, out of 10, this grip would probably be like, I would say an 8 if I was gonna rate it. 8 or a 9. I mean, it's really good. I don't know that there's anything here that will be better as far as, you know, grip is concerned. Now, some people don't like this. They say, oh, it's cheap material and this can get skinned up and worn off. Yes, that's true. I'd say it would probably be the least durable of these in the long run, and it can start to look nasty and peel apart like this, but I use this thing pretty hard and I haven't had an issue with it yet. So anyway, very good grip on that for my personal taste. Next is the Swamp Romper, and this is by, again, Condor. Now these guys use, they call it hardwood. It's usually, they don't really specify. Some people say it's walnut, some people say it's whatever. But it's just it's a wood handle, wood scale. This is designed by Joe Flowers, and I think he did a really good job. The only thing I would say is this palm swell here is a little too much. With how deep this choil is for your first finger, this feels a little bit big. You know, if this maybe wasn't as deep, but when you do like just a hammer grip on it to really do some hard carving, it kind of feels like it could maybe move a little bit. That being said, for fine tests and when you're choking up on it, this palm swell is no longer an issue. And if you want to grip back on it too, you can totally do that. Now I have a size extra large glove is what I wear, and you've got a lot of extra real estate here. I mean, I've got a pretty big mitt, and this thing offers loads and loads of room. Also has these little kind of, I'll call them a swedge or whatever, but it's nice for choking up. It doesn't get in your way if you're doing little things, especially if you're using it for like a ferro rod or something. The grip on this, I would give this probably like a 6 or a 7, maybe. If this is a 9, then this would be, we'll give this like a 7. I like it, but the cool thing about this is if you don't like it much, you can change it easily with some sandpaper and bring it down to what you want, and it should still fit nice and snug in here as long as you're not making hugely drastic changes to it. So anyway, this is a little tight in the sheath, but still needs to be broken in. Anyway, now let's move on to the Ep.10. This is such a beautiful knife, if I can just say that. I mean, this thing is just gorgeous. This is birch burl, and the wood grain on this is just great. It's got this little brass guard on here, rat tail tang that's peened over. And this thing, for fine carving and stuff, it fits beautifully. The only thing I could say is it would be nice if there was a little more at the front for slipping forward, because this blade is so close to the guard here. I say guard, it's more decorative than anything, because it's not an actual guard, but very, very nice for all grips that you could want. For my hand personally, it's very nice and round, so when you really purchase on there, it kind of just locks in. Now, this being a rat tail tang and so pretty, I can't bring myself to really beat the snot out of this thing and really do anything intense with it for this test. So I will leave it out of some of the tests because I just don't want to, I don't want to beat this thing up, essentially, because it's just really nice. I'll use it for carving, and I use it for striking some fires and stuff, but even for a test, I don't baton when I bushcraft. It's exceedingly rare, and I don't think I would use this just because it's pretty. And some people get mad at that, but whatever. That's my choice. Last is the grip on this Falkneven. The grip is narrow, as you can see. It's quite a bit narrower than like the Swamp Romper, or even the Mora, or the Ep.10. It's closer to this. But somehow it's not less comfortable. I carved with this thing a lot when I first got it. I mean, like a lot. I just whipped on it and did a ton of carving, and made a couple spoons with it and did some other stuff, and I got no hot spots on this thing, and it was very comfortable. This guard is kind of, your finger just locks in there, very nice. The back of the blade is nice and broad for just kind of doing a lot of carving. It's not super sharp, like it doesn't do an awesome job on a ferro rod at all, but it's still really nice. It's got a lanyard hole for those of you guys who like the lanyards. I'm not a fan personally, but this is their I don't remember the material that they use, but it's some sort of a rubbery plastic stuff, so some people don't like that, but for me, the checkering on here does a really good job for grip. So for me, this grip is it's quite good. I would probably give this at least as good as the Mora. It's totally different, but it's just as comfortable. So I'd probably give this a 9, and I would probably give this like an 8 or a 9 as well. They're all very good, and no grip is really going to be perfect, I don't think. So this is probably the least of them, but they're all very comfortable. After that, let's do some cutting tests so you guys can see how these things work, and we'll see how different grinds affect how they work. Alright guys, so first up, something I don't like to do with my blades, but something that if I don't do, all the knife ninjas on YouTube will absolutely lose their minds if I do not baton. So what I've got here is a chunk of maple, firewood that is relatively green and will be undoubtedly quite difficult to split. This would be a very good test. Old seasoned wood splits nicely, carves nicely. Green wood, especially this maple, does not. So I'm going to start out with this bad boy. We'll start out with the Falkneven and see where it goes from there. I'm going to go just on the side here so I can split this a couple times, and we'll just see how it goes. Alright, going a little off to the side here. But basically, I went through it without any issue. If you look at this thing, look at the width. Look at the width on this thing. I mean, it's super wide, and it's about, it's convex ground from about halfway, and they had a convex edge on there. I took the convex edge off. Please don't anyone freak out. Convex edge is fine. It's just I wanted to see what this thing would be like on the wicked edge. It's easy enough to put a convex back on it. So anyway, let's just do that one more time. Make sure that boy, oh boy, this is some stinking hard crap. But there we go. As soon as we got through the top portion of it, split right down. So that did quite well. I've done a bunch with this knife. I've really whipped on that Falkneven, and it is rock solid. It's not going anywhere. Let's go to the cheapest knife here, and we'll see how that does. Now, this is decidedly much less thick of a blade stock. So for splitting, I mean, look at that. Look at that. So much difference. So for splitting, this could be an issue because the thickness there does help to split, and some people aren't comfortable with the Mora because it's not a full tang knife, but I've never had issue with Moras no matter how hard I abuse them, and it's splitting this just fine. I'm not going to go all the way down and smack my other knives with the blade, but suffice to say, this will split pretty easily. I'll go the long way on this, split with it again. And those of you guys who know Mora, you know that they pretty much do everything, you know, really well. I've never been like, I'm really disappointed with this Mora. No matter what you end up doing with them, they just seem to work no matter what. And I've never broken one. I mean, of course, people have broken them, but people have broken just about every knife out there. Let me snag another piece of wood, and we'll do, I don't know if I'm going to do this one, but I'll definitely baton with the Swamp Romper and see what that thing will do. Okay, well, this thing's got a big ugly knot in it. I guess I'll just start on the other end, and this is first time batoning with the Swamp Romper for me because I just got this knife recently. So let's see how this thing does. Now, as far as thickness goes, well, I can tell this is not going to be its nice experience. Oh, come on, you. Yeah. Now, if you look at this, it's thinner than even the Mora, okay, which is great for a lot of stuff, but maybe not this. And the way it's ground, it's kind of like flat ground, and then it has like a kind of a whitish bevel here, so it's thin behind the edge. It's really good for carving, but for batoning and splitting wood, this is not that good, but it's a very good knife for doing knife stuff. You know, that's part of the problem with batoning and all this crap that people do, is it's really not knife stuff. I'm kind of doing axe stuff with a knife. But let's just see how this bad boy does. Oh. There we go. Now maybe this wood was just a little tougher, but once I got down in it, it seems to be doing okay. Slipped out the back of this thing a little bit. Let's try to ram it down in there a little better. This is total abuse, by the way, but you almost have to do it on YouTube, or else people will say you didn't really test that knife and it would have broken. Okay, anyway, it's right about to split. So there's that. Boy, this wood was tough. For the sake of testing this out, I want to see if this piece would be as hard with this other grind, or if these grinds are better suited than the Swamp Romper. Okay, well, the Falkneven is definitely splitting easier, I think, because of the width. So for batoning, we're definitely Swamp Romper performed the least out of that, the least splitting capabilities. Falkneven was probably the best. The Mora was pretty close. This has a really wide Scandi on it, so I'm sure it would do quite well, but I'm not going to do it. And maybe that's the problem with some of these very pretty, expensive knives, is that you don't want to beat them up. Not only that, but it was a gift. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to baton with it. So we'll just have to, I'll have to assume that it would perform probably pretty close to the Mora. I'm just not willing to whip on this knife. So sorry guys, but that's how I'm going to play this. So in order of batoning and splitting, it'd be the Falkneven, then the Mora, and then the Condor. I wonder if my Condor Nesmic would do any better. I seem to remember it being a little better because it's their Scandi Vex or whatever, but I'm not going to bring that thing out because I'm mad at it still for having such a crap edge on it. Anyway, let's go on to some carving stuff and some doing actual knife stuff with knives. Now that we got the abuse out of the way, now we can actually cut stuff. Alright, so for our next test, this is a little bit more seasoned. Looks like some little buggies have been getting in there chewing on this stuff. But this is a little more seasoned piece of maple that's from last year. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of carving with this, and we'll do the obligatory feather sticks. First up will be the Falkneven. Just get some of this bark off here. Actually, you know what? Let me get all these other knives out of the way so that I don't hit anything while I'm carving away. Okay. Let's get some of this crap off of here. Alright, let's see if this stuff will feather stick at all. And I can tell you for a fact that this knife will definitely feather stick. This wood might not be the best for it. Let's get some of this stuff flattened out. Okay, let's try this now. Now, what I can say is that this thing feather sticks better after I put this edge on it than it did when it had the factory convex edge on it. I don't know why, but the feathers just seem to come up a little bit easier when I had this edge versus the convex. So you can see, you know, it's it'll definitely make some fine little curls there. You know, this stuff, obviously, you know, certain wood is better for for doing feather sticks than others. This stuff certainly is not the best, but it will work. So yeah, you can definitely make feather sticks with this. Let's try some of the other stuff and see. Let's try the swamp romper. I have not feather sticked with this yet. Now this does have a bit of a convex edge on it. You know, a final edge. Not so much a grind, but you can get some fine ones with it. See, I don't know. This thing is not doing quite as good, I don't think. Maybe I'll start fresh on a new spot. See how it goes there. I did sharpen this before I started because Condor is not famous for having good edges. Come on, man. It's getting annoying now. Try it out here. You know, with this blade shape and grind, it might have just kind of taken a real beating with the batoning, because the wider the blade is, the more it spreads the wood and the less this edge actually comes into contact with it. Let me just get a fresh spot here and try with this to give it a fair shake. Just debark this a little bit. See, the curls seem to just be thicker and they don't want to curl as much. It's hard to get like a shallow, there we go. That's starting. Part of it is that I don't have as much experience with this knife. You know, each knife, it takes a little bit different technique. It's a little bit different technique to get good curls. But some knives are just better. And I'm starting to get some, there we go. These are fine now. Maybe I should have picked a knife I know a little better, huh? I still don't think this is quite as good at making curls as the Falkneven. So, I don't know. I would say it didn't perform as well. It just didn't. Not bad. I mean, you can make curls with it, and I bet you if I spent some more time with this knife that I could really get it to perform well. And there's probably someone out there who's got this knife and it performs a lot better than what I'm doing with it. But I definitely have more experience with the Falkneven, and that's probably what it is. I'll go to a knife I have, again, a lot more experience with, the Mora. Get a clean spot and we'll do some feather sticks here. See, I'll tell you, when I go back to the Scandinavian grind after having some other stuff, sometimes I find it harder to do. Like, it takes me a minute to get back used to it. Alright, so you see how this thing is just throwing up these really nice curls? I mean, look at those. Those are much better than the Swamp Romper. This thing just bites better, bites easier, and it's more controllable. I think the Mora does better curls than the Falkneven, I believe, at least for me. Although I did get some pretty fine ones. You guys will be able to tell from the video what you think did a better job. But I would rate the Mora and the Falkneven just about even for making feather sticks. I'll put this down here. Now, last up, let's see what the Ati Puko will do. By the way, as far as like factory edge, Nothing I've ever used was as sharp as this knife right here when it came out of the box. It was just absolutely like lightsaber sharp. Now Mora always does a good job on their factory edges in my opinion, but this thing was just like next level. I could not believe how sharp it was, and when I looked closely I could see that it had been stropped before it was sent out, and that made such a difference. Boy, look at the fine little curls this thing's putting out. Really thin. This is as far as like how it feels, probably about the same feel as the Mora, but I feel like some of these are a little bit finer. Let's clear this away. Oh, hang up spot right there. Let me get that out. I'd put this about equal with the Mora as far as feather sticks go. So, for me, I think I've seen enough, because feather sticking is pretty indicative of other carving, and you know, obviously I didn't test the build quality on this knife as far as like batoning with it, but I don't think it would break. I just don't want to take a chance, and I don't want to make it ugly and nasty looking. Anyway, let's get into final thoughts. Okay, guys, so we've gone through all these knives now, and you know, I've kind of got them lined up in order of price. You got the Mora, and the Condor, and the Ati, and the Falkneven. Sheaths, these two were the clear winners. So you got one about $100, one about $45-50. Next was the Mora, you know, the cheapest, and all their sheaths are essentially the same until you get into the, you know, Garberg and stuff. But anyway, you know, just a regular plastic sheath. You know, in last place was this, the Falkneven, by far the most expensive knife. Final conclusions: I don't think that you have to spend a ton of money to get a really nice blade for bushcraft. Now, that being said, there are some perks, and I don't have some of the really high end with like the crazy steels. You know, you could get plenty of brands out there that have something crazy like CPM 3V or, you know, M4. Those are all like beautiful steels that will definitely outperform these in edge retention and all that stuff. But I think, you know, there's a couple stainless blades here, a couple carbon blades here. I think if you bought any one of these, you'd be happy. Now, again, I was too chicken to go all out on this blade, and maybe I regret it, but at the same time I don't. I don't think it would break, but to me, batoning really isn't what a knife is for. If that's a consideration for you, I think these three would certainly stand up to the punishment, and really any Condor. This is one of the thinner blades that Condor makes, actually, and it's good for cutting and slicing and some other stuff. Not the best for batoning. For me, that does not make or break a knife, its ability to baton, because I don't do it. When I'm bushcrafting, I have an axe with me. So anyway, guys, I think you know, overall scores on these would all be very close, and I personally couldn't justify, with such good budget blades on the market, I can't really justify buying something like the Falkneven here. Now, I love this knife, and it's great, and it's really, really good in hand, and I like it, you know, a little bit better than my budget blades, but I like it a little better. It's not like this thing absolutely blows it out of the water and I don't want to use my other stuff. In some situations I prefer the other ones. So I guess in the budget versus premium blade category for Bushcraft, you don't have to spend the money. Like I said, there are high-end knives out there that would be worth the extra investment, but for this lineup, I don't see why you need to spend more when you can buy a Condor or a Mora and have a pretty much bulletproof knife. So anyway, guys, that's I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you maybe took something away from this. And if you have any other really good budget knives that you've used, or you've got some really high-end knives that you've got that you think just absolutely murder these things, then go ahead and post them in the description box, or excuse me, in the comments below, and I will check that out. Like I said, I know there's high-end blades that will definitely outperform these low-end ones. Not saying that, but for my sample, what I've got here, I think sometimes the price and difference, or the difference in price, is not really justified for fixed blade. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching this episode of Knife Thursday, which is more like a fixed blade Friday. Anyway, God bless, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe.